Hello, everyone. This is Professor K here, and this is week 4 of NETW191, Introduction to Networking. We're going to be going over the week 4 lesson 3 lab. So and I'm not just going to be going over the steps on how to complete the lab, because in the live lesson tomorrow, Professor will go through those as well. I'm going to try to add some additional information into the session. So again, what we're doing is we're the first part of the labs are always about course material, specific information about what we're going to be doing in the lab. This is a lab on remote desktop, RDP, which basically allows one computer to connect and take control of another computer. It is not, well, it is similar to what we do with the DeVry desktop. Now, the DeVry desktop is you're actually logging into a virtual computer, and that is your virtual computer. So in the same scenario or example as RDP, if you had two computers, you own two computers, and let's say you had a computer at home and you had you were at work using a computer, and you needed to get to some information at home, or you're at home and you had to get to some information at work, you could use RDP to remote desktop into let's say you're at home, you could use that to remote into your computer at work, and you would take control of it, right? But that's still the computer at work, right? So you are not owning that computer at that time. You are controlling that computer, and basically it's acting as if you're sitting in front of the computer using the keyboard and the mouse, right? So you have the ability to control it. Now, when you RDP into a session, depending upon how you set it up, you have the ability to control what happens on the remote computer while you're remoting into it. So you can leave it at the login, you can leave the screen blank, or you can show. So you could actually use it as a learning or training session, so you can remote into someone else's computer, take control of it, and then show them what they need to do, right? Before we had services like Splashtop is one of them. Splashtop is a tool, LogMeIn is a tool that allows a remote person to log into a computer and to see the screen, and then upon authorization, take control of the computer. And this is what tech support uses in a lot of situations to help support remote users, okay, so that they have the ability to remote into that computer. So RDP was the original, very first opportunity where you could allow a connection so that somebody can remote into a computer. Now, one of the things we're going to go through in this lab is how we can use the Windows firewall to either allow access for RDP or block access for RDP. The one thing about RDP is you can also have it so that you don't have to have a response from the remote computer. So in other words, you're at home, you need a file from work. So you can remote into your remote computer or your computer at work, and nobody has to be there to authorize you to remote in. You can also set it up so that when you remote in, somebody has to give you authorization to continue what you are doing. And so we are going to go through in this lab various ways where we can allow or block RDP using the Windows firewall, as well as allowing specific users to connect remotely using RDP. So you could say this user gets this access, this user gets this access, this user does not get any access, and so forth. Okay, so let's, I'm just gonna go through here until, okay, so basically we're on the third menu item here, down here, where we're gonna start connecting. So I'm gonna start the lab. Now what the lab is doing, okay, it's setting up the entire environment for you. So this is a virtual instance of this, not only computer, but computers and network. So it's going to set up a switch, a firewall, a router, and one or more computers, so that you can do what you need to do, not impacting anyone else. All right. So it's your own instance. That's why it takes a little time when you go into clone, start the lab, you're cloning machines, which cloning machine means there's a template of a machine, a virtual machine, and it's cloning an instance of that so that you can use it, right? And you're the only one that's using it. Now that's different than the DeVry desktop, because each time you log into a lab, it is creating the instance from scratch. The DeVry desktop, after you log it in the first time, or I should say the first time you log in, it is going to create your environment. Every time after that, for your entire academic studies, that instance of that DeVry desktop is yours and will remain the same. So you can consider it your own computer. You can set up a file structure, you can save files, you can upload files from your computer, your personal computer, to it. You can download files from it to your personal computer. You can use it as a central repository so that you can store all of your data from your personal computer. In the event that you were to have something happen with your personal computer, that instance of that virtual computer for you would be there, so that when you replaced your personal computer or got it working again, let's say you had to wipe the OS and start from scratch, you could then, once you got the operating system up running and everything was good, all you would have to do is connect to the DeVry desktop, and then you could download your files from the DeVry desktop back to your local computer, and you'd be right back where you left off. Just a side note, I do recommend that at some point you connect with DeVry Tech Support and have them show you how to correctly set up DeVry OneDrive, so that DeVry OneDrive will basically set up a mirrored filing system on the computer that you have OneDrive set up on and OneDrive in the cloud. So any computer that you install OneDrive and log into OneDrive as yourself, you will have a mirrored copy of everything that's stored in OneDrive. So the goal is you would talk to DeVry Tech Support. They would help you set up OneDrive. You would decide which files on your local computer you wanted to keep in OneDrive. You would my suggestion is you would move those files into OneDrive. Don't copy them, because then you'll be confused as to where your latest copy is. You'll move those files onto OneDrive, and at that point, they'll be in the cloud, they'll be on your local computer, and when you log into the DeVry desktop and log into OneDrive on the DeVry desktop, you will have the access to the exact same files. This way, you're protected. You don't have to worry about backing up those files. You don't have to worry about which computer you're using. Any computer you use, as long as you log into OneDrive, you will have access to those files. Okay, so it's now set up our environment. We have two servers, server.10 and server.11, and it's saying that it wants us to log into server.10. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, and again, just for starting at ground zero, the reason you have to press Control-Alt-Delete is because your computer is seeing the keyboard action first, and then it's being passed to the remote computer. So if you type Control-Alt-Delete on your keyboard, your computer is going to see that, capture that, and never send that to the remote computer. So that's why they have a button here, which basically initiates the Control-Alt-Delete and allows you to log in. And if I'm not mistaken, the password is going to be, yes, they've standardized. So the password is the same. So let me move this. Actually, let me move this over to here. And then I'll just have my main screen here. And so here's our, I'm going to log in, and it's P @ and a lot of people mistake the @ and don't put that in correctly. And they also, and I just P @ SSW0RD. Okay, and now I'm going to log into our remote desktop. I'm sorry, I'm logging into our virtual computer. I apologize. It's not the remote desktop. I'm logging into the virtual computer. So let me bring this up. All right, so I'm going to click Start, and it says to type remote. Okay, so basically it's searching for anything that's on the computer or any setting in the computer that has the word remote in it. And here's our remote desktop connection. Okay, and it already has so it's already defaulted to this. So that means that they've pre-configured it for this. Typically, the first time you are connecting to a computer using remote desktop connection, it will not be filled in with the IP address because it will not know which one you want to connect to, because you can connect to anyone in the world. You can try to connect to anyone in the world, but it already has it in there, so you don't need to really type anything. It just wants us to connect to it. And here we get a warning message. It says a remote desktop can't connect to the remote computer for one of these reasons. So remote access to the server is not enabled. And that could be in two sides. Your firewall is not allowing you to connect to a remote desktop, or the remote system that you're trying to connect to, its firewall will not allow you to get to that desktop. So both firewalls have to allow the connection. And that's for security purposes. Because obviously, if you're at work and you work for an organization that has sensitive information above and beyond the typical intellectual property, financial information for an organization. Let's say you're a government contractor or something like that, or you work for a health organization and there's HIPAA requirements, or you're in the HR department for a company, and that information cannot be shared external to the organization, then that firewall for that organization would be set up to block remote desktop. So it wouldn't matter what the receiving computer was set up for, you would not be able to get to it because your local firewall would not allow that connection to even start from your local network. The second one, or the next one, is the remote computer is turned off. Obviously, if you can't You won't be able to remote into that computer to log into it. And the last thing is the remote computer is not available on the network. Well, in some cases, it's the same thing as the firewall not being configured to allow RDP to pass through both directions. It also could be that the computer's turned on, but it's not logged in to the network correctly, or it's not on the correct subnet that you can get to. So there's a lot of things that have to happen in order to make that connection from one computer to go out the firewall, to go out to the internet, to hit the other firewall, and to get to the remote computer to establish this remote connection. So right now we're going to do some troubleshooting to figure out why we can't connect to this remote computer. And again, we have a .10 and a .11 computer. We're on the .10, and we're trying to remote into a .11. Now you'll see when I pull this back over, by basis of the diagram and the IP addressing, these two computers are on the same network, 192.168.12.10 and 192.68.12.11. Now, so you would think that, well, I should be able to get access to them. They're on the same network. The diagram is showing me that there's one network connection. These two computers are connected to it, so why can't I? And that's what we're going to troubleshoot now and figure out why. So we're going to use the command prompt. And it says double click the command prompt. All right. And let's see what it's going to ask us to do. So first thing it wants to do is see, is the other computer reachable? Right? From this computer, .10, can I get to .11? And the ping command is a basic tool that allows us, and I do have a issue where I can't type and talk at the same time, so bear with me. Okay, so I'm going to ping. Just a side note, ping, the term ping comes from the Navy, because that's how submarines were actually able to find one another, or ships on the surface could find submarines. They could ping one another back and forth. It was sending a sonar ping, a sound out into the ocean that could be received by other devices. So technology just took that, because that's what we're doing. I'm sending this, blasting this out to the world to see if I can get a response from 192.168.12.11. And yes, I can. So wait a minute. I can talk from my computer. I can see the other computer, and it replies to me. So now there's something else going on that's preventing it. So it's not that, one, it's not that the computer's off. Two, it's not that the computer is not on the same network that I can get to, because I can ping it. So if I can ping it, that means I can see it, it can see me, it responds to me, and I can hear the request coming back. So something else is going on. So let's see what they're going to have us do. And right there, it said ping was successful, which eliminated the reason for number 2, the remote computer is not turned off, and reason 3, the remote computer is not available on the network. So something is preventing the RDP session from working. So now we're going to go and we're going to check to see if the other computer has remote access enabled. So it wants us to switch back over and click on the, so I've clicked on the .11 computer, and we're going to log into that. And again, it's the same process. Now, something you may already note, the naming of the Windows tab that you're in when you log into the remote computer, .10, the .10 server is always going to be internal _1 scoring. Think of it as the first server. The second server is going to be the .11, and it's going to be internal 2 _scoring. Now, I tend to think that being anal is a good attribute. So I would not have done this. If I was going to name the first one internal _1 scoring, I would have followed the same pattern, and there would have been 2 underscores in the second one. That's the first thing. But why make it so complicated? Why not just name the first one 192.168.12.10 and the second one 192.68.12.11? It would be, and they used to have it that way. I don't know why they changed it. Anyway, so just remember, that's how, because we're going to have 2 screens open. We're going to be bouncing back and forth, and it can get confusing as to which one you're on. So just remember, the 1 is the first server, .10. The 2 is the second server, .11. Okay, I'm going to log into it. And again, it's uppercase P, A, oops, @ SS, W, O, sorry, W0RD, up, P, @ SS, W0RD. Okay. All right. So now so we've got our first computer. Now I don't know what it's going to do, and I don't want to jump ahead. Yeah, it's asking us to do something else, but I just wanted to show you. So let's check. So I'm on the, see, here's the other thing. Here they name it command prompt on the first server, and they name it CMD shortcut. This kind of stuff just drives me crazy. Anyway, so now I'm going to ping 192.168.12.10. I'm going to go from server 2 to server 1. Let's see if we can see it. And yes, so typically that will always be the case, because by server 1 sending a ping request and getting a response means that there's a 2-way communication back and forth. So that's that happening, and you switch over to server 2, you would expect that 99.9% of the time you would get the same response on server 2, which we did. Okay. So now it wants, we're going to check to see if server 2, the .11, has been configured for remote access. So it wants us to go on, to click on, let me get this up out of the way. So again, I'm on server 2. I'm going to hit start, and it wants me to go to computer, and then right-click computer, and I want to click on properties. Okay, so now I'm in the server properties, and now it wants us to look at the remote settings. Okay. So right away, we can see that this allow remote access connections to this computer is not enabled, and remote desktop don't allow connections to this computer. So this is not enabled, and this is enabled, basically disabling this computer from allowing any other computer to remote connect. Also wanted to let you know that you don't have to be on a remote network to RDP into another computer. You could be sitting next to someone on the same network, be on the same subnet, and you can remote into it to take control of it or to transfer files. So you don't have to be on a completely separate network. But here it's saying that this computer, the number 2 server, the .11 server, is not allowing a remote connection. So now We can't just select this because the option is not even enabled for us to check it. So we have to click, and it wants us to allow running any version of remote desktop. So the risk here is that the computer trying to connect in could be running an older version of remote desktop, meaning it does not have the same security patches or updates that the current computer or the receiving computer has, which immediately puts the receiving computer in the same vulnerable state as the computer that is trying to connect in. So you've heard the term path of least resistance. It's the easiest way to get to something. So by doing this, the easiest way for bad actors or bad things to happen is to go the path of least resistance, which would be to the first computer connecting, which has the older version of remote desktop, which has less security updates and patches. That vulnerability passes immediately to any connection that the server 1 is connected to. So it's connected to server, it's going to be connected to server 2. It would pass those same things. So it wants us to try this first and say yes. Let me make sure. Yeah, it wants us to allow this. So we say okay. All right, and then okay. All right. Now it wants us to click in the control panel. Okay, so the first thing we did is we started at the very basics, which is no matter if everything else is set up correctly, if the computer is not accepting a remote connection, you're not going to make it to it, right? So the first thing it wanted us to do is to make sure that the computer can receive and accept a remote desktop connection, which we just did. Now we're backing up the pathway to the host computer. And the first pathway is to go to the firewall. So now we have to check to make sure that the firewall will let that connection request pass through it to the remote computer. So we're supposed to click on Systems and Security, Windows Firewall. So even if we are not trying to set up a remote desktop connection, even if we were just a part of the network administration and we were just checking, we have a new computer added to the network and we want to just make sure that it's been connected correctly, we would go to this same pathway and see that, wait a minute, our firewall settings on this computer are not set up correctly. Because in the picture, right, we're not using a firewall device here. We're using the Windows firewall on this computer and the Windows firewall on this computer. Okay, it's just a block that says I can stop traffic or I can allow traffic to come to my computer, or I can stop or allow traffic from my computer out. So there's not a physical device here that is impacting everyone. It's saying this computer has a Windows firewall and this computer has a Windows firewall. So in this scenario, we're working to set up the configuration first on this system, and then we'll be looking at this system. So all right. So it says, first of all, it wants us to use the recommended settings. So for the purpose of the lab, if the lab was to go into all of the things that what are the recommending settings, this lab would take a very long time. But I do recommend that you take time and go through and click on this to see what the recommended settings are. So I'm going to do that for a second. And it's basically giving you old school help information on Windows Firewall. Here it's talking about a firewall and then ultimately be talking about Windows Firewall. Now, because we are in the age of technology where we have what I consider to be a phenomenal tool called AI, I recommend that when you have a question about what's happening on your computer, what you should do or not do, or how you should do it, or what's happening on your computer, get used to using some form of generative AI. And if you're interested, if you've not done it and you would like to go through a session on doing something about generative AI, here is, let me bring this over so that you can see it. This is my contact information. Just reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to at any time. It doesn't matter if it's this semester, next semester, or semester down the road, whatever. Reach out to me and I would be more than happy to set up a session specifically on using AI appropriately within a class environment, and then how employers are not only going to expect, but they're going to require employees in a technical field to know how to use AI. Because the day of having to find a reference manual and look in an index and find something to find a setting and how I do this is gone. You know, you need to use the technology that's available, and they're going to expect you to be able to use AI to troubleshoot, to find answers, to explain things. So don't hesitate, reach out to me if you would like to do that. Okay, so we're going to use the recommended settings. Okay. Now it's already configured it. It's ready to go. Let's see what it wants us to do next. Okay. And then it wants us to make sure the Windows firewall is turned on. And here's how we turn it on. And we have options. We can turn it on, but we can block all incoming connections. So we can say that we only want our computer to be able to connect outward, but we don't want anything to be able to connect to it, right? We can also have it set up to notify the user on this computer when Windows is blocking a new program. So a new program is installed and Windows Firewall is going to block it. By default, we might want to know about that, because instead of assuming that the program has the correct access, this will let us know. And then here is turning off Windows Firewall, which is not recommended. And then this is, so this is for private networks. This is for public networks. It's the exact same thing. So we just leave both set on for turn on Windows Firewall. It's just opened and on, and we want to make sure both those settings are set. We click OK. And it wants us to close this. Now, I sent out an announcement to the students in my class. Again, best practices in a technical world. If you're in the technical world, you're not just a user, but you're a tech. You want to be careful when you click the X. Now, we've already hit OK, and there is no other option here to select OK. So by clicking X, we're just closing the application. If there was a button here that was enabled for OK and we clicked X, we would not be accepting the changes that we just made. Okay, and it may or may not warn you. So you want to be cautious. And if there is an option to click OK, to close, to exit, you want to take those options first before hitting the X. But here it's telling us, and there are no other options. So we're going to hit the X, and we're done with the Windows firewall settings here. It's saying that because we've opened up the connection on the remote machine, that we should be able to connect to from the, I'm sorry, they're both on the same network, they're not really remote, but let's say I was sitting at server.10, which is this server. So anything other than this is a remote machine. So now I should be able to connect to this, right? So I can go back to my remote desktop connection, okay? And we can try to connect again. And look at this. Now it's saying that I passed my firewall, I passed its firewall, I've reached the computer, and now all I need to do is log in. So this is the next level of security. If I didn't have local admin password, or I didn't have a user account set up on that remote computer, I would be stuck right here. I wouldn't be able to get in. Okay, so let's see what it's going to have us do. And we're going to log now. So now this is, so each computer can have its own administrator password for the computer, and the network can have its own administrative password that can be different. So the login credentials, it could still be administrator, but if you're trying to log into a network device as administrator, it could and should have its own password. The local computer, its administrative password could be different, or it could be the same. Now, in most business environments, the IT organization will set the local administrator password on all devices to be the same, so they don't have to look up and remember for computer 54 what is the password, right? But that password is typically never shared with anyone on the network. It's just for the support individuals. But we know, so we're acting as a support individual. We know that, or we've been told that it's the same uppercase P @SSW0RD, and we hit OK. And now it's trying to connect to the other computer. So while it's doing this, because there's a lot happening in the background to establish this connection, you could use some form of generative AI to explain, say, explain to me what is happening the minute I hit enter after I've entered the password for the remote computer. What is happening to establish that connection? And it will give you the answers, or it will communicate with you. And it's different than if you use a browser and you ask that question, then your Google account is now going to all of a sudden, or your browser is going to start hitting you with, your social media will be hitting with all kinds of ads. That's why I really do like AI, to be used in an appropriate manner in a classroom environment. Okay, so it says after a brief period of time, you're going to get the certificate. Yes, I can hear you.
Good. We got it going to.
Okay, great, excellent. So just like April is, speak out if you have any questions, and we'll continue going on. Just mute your mic if you're not going to be talking, so there's no background noise. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so
clicking on the mic.
All right, so now it says the identity of the remote computer cannot be verified. So the certificate name, there's something going on with the certificate name. So I do not know for certain. April, we are on step 29 in the, here, I'll show you. We're on step 29. So we're still in the third menu or third phase of the lab, and we're on step 29. So at this point, we're getting a response that the remote computer can't be verified. There's no certainty that we're connecting to a computer that we should be or think we're connecting to. And here it's saying that the certificate name is this. Okay, the certificate is not from a trusted certifying authority. Okay, so it's giving us a warning. So it says, note, the connection to the remote computer should be successful. You should notice the following tab. Oh, so if we don't care about this, so we have some background information, we know that as an organization, or this is my personal home computer network, and I haven't really gone through the trouble of setting up correct certificates on each computer, but I just want to connect into it. I know it's safe, or I've been told it's safe. I'm just going to bypass this for right now because I want to establish the connection. So I click yes, and it's going to pass that step of connecting to the remote computer. And the length of time for you to establish the complete connection from one computer to another computer depends on about 1 million things. Are you running a lot of applications on the first computer? Are you running a lot of applications on the second computer? What's happening on the network? Things like that. But once you've established a connection, you can see that I am now connected. So I now have this tab. This is my internal one server, which is the .10. And I have this connection. You see how this tab up here says .11? It's showing me that this is the .11 computer. Okay, so I just want to see what it says. Okay, so it did not have this open. Okay, so basically it says we know we're connected because we have this in the connection bar. Okay, and we can minimize this, right? So just as in a standard environment, you can have multiple windows open, multiple applications open. You can open up your browser in multiple windows, and you can minimize and maximize them. Down here, we see the command prompt, and right here we see, I know it's going to be very hard for you to see on your in the recording or on screen, but it says 192.168.12.11, a remote desktop connection. So this tab right here is my remote desktop connection. So I can minimize it, I can maximize it, restore it up, restore it down. I can close it. I can pin this, just like any other tab that I was working with. It just, you've got to keep track of where you are, right? So I'm not on my local computer. In this window, I'm on my remote computer. But you see how the main window icon stays the same. it's the dot 10, which is my main computer. But when I have this tab opened, I'm on the dot 11. And here is where most people, most general users will always get confused on where they are. And then technical people, until they get very, very used to this, will get confused as to which computer they are on, and then they start making changes to the wrong computer. So it's very important to pause and make sure you realize that I'm not on, if I'm in this window, I am on this computer, but I am now remoted into this computer. So any change I make here is not going to be affected or impacted or initiated onto this computer. Okay, so it says go in and double click the RDP folder. Okay, so this is just a folder. It just happens to be named RDP. Okay, and we have two files in there, flag2 and sample flag. Let's see what it's gonna, so it wants us to double click the sample flag.txt. Again, just starting at ground zero, the reason we know it's a .txt is two things. It says it's a text file. That tells us it's a .txt. It also has the little icon that shows us it's a text file. And so it wants us to double click on this. And we see that we're at flag 999818. That's just an indicator, a number, okay? And so it's going to want us, so in the lab, it's asking us to verify that we did everything previous to this that it asked us to do so that we can answer this question, which the answer to this question is 999818. And just to make sure, let me make sure 999818. I'm going to submit and successful. Okay, so now let's see what it says here. It says, get the information for below challenge flag by using the same techniques from the previous step. Okay, so they want us to go into flag 2. So I can close this. We're done with this one. And then I'll double click on flag 2, and that's 211669. And so I'm going to answer this question. 211, I think it was 619. Let me check. 211, oh, 669, sorry, 211669. And again, these are just to make sure that you have done what it's asked us just to do. You would not be able to get this number unless you got to this point. And if you enter the wrong number, it's not going to let you proceed. So, okay, that's been, so now it's saying, and then we can close out of flag 2. Okay. Now it says to verify that we are on the remote machine, okay, the .11, Windows Server, the remote machine, click the start button, then right click on computer and select properties. Joel, we are on, here we go. We are on step 33. We are on the first segment, or I'm sorry, the third segment of this lab. And step 33. Okay, so from this connection here, lab number 4, Joel, lab number 4. And when I complete lab 4, then we'll go back to 1, 2, and 3 for anyone who wants to stay on. Okay, so now this tab here is not 100% guarantee that we are actually on 192.168.12.10. right? The only way to confirm that is to do what it's saying here, is to click on Start. Right click on Computer, and again, go to Properties. Okay, and then from there, so here's the computer name right here. It says W2K8R2 internal 2. That's the name of this computer. Okay, and then again, it's just pausing. It's going to ask us another question. Okay, so in the computer description, it's asking us for the flag number. So here we can see in the computer description, it has this number, 335588. And again, the only purpose of this is for the lab to make sure that you're following along. 335588, I think it was. 335588, submit. We're good. Now we're going to move on. Okay, so now it wants us to click Start. Okay. And then right here to here, and we want to disconnect. So we are remotely connected to a computer. By clicking Start on that computer, because we are remoted in, we get the option for the disconnect. So here's another reason why it's extremely important for you, the user that's doing this, to recognize and identify which computer you're on. Because let's say I was on my own computer at work and I was asked to check something on the main server on the network. So I was asked to RDP into it, check something, get a setting, and report back. And I did. And then I was told, okay, you can get off that computer. So I click over here, log off, and now I just logged off the main server. I didn't just disconnect from it. I logged it off. So you'll see that when I come over here and I click on the .11, it just didn't open up .11. It's reconfiguring it, and I'm going to have to re-log into it. So I'm going to log back into this. Sorry. And because it had to reconfigure it, let's go back. Sorry. Let me minimize this. I don't want too many things open here. And I want to go back and show you exactly what we did. Yeah, here we are. It's just, I don't want to do this a shortcut way, because then I'm not following what they have told us to do in the lab. So it wants us to click on Start. Remember, we had to click on Start, and then we had to go to Computer. We right-clicked, we went to Properties. And then from here, we went to Remote Settings, right? And here we have allow computers. So the computer, because I clicked log off, I logged off the remote computer. So if a better example is, let's say there are two users. User one is on computer one and user two is on computer two. And user one needed a file from user two. So they've already verbally confirmed that it's okay for them to remote into each other's computer. So user one remotes into user two computer and receives the file. Now, user two is expecting to continue doing what they're doing, but user one logs off that computer. So basically it logs the computer off. It doesn't disconnect the connection. It logs the computer off, which means the user two now has to log back in, and it's no different than if you log off your computer, right? You may or may not have to restart a bunch of things. So you want to be really careful after you establish the connection, how you're going to close that connection. And again, let me just go back here. Let me go back. Okay, so we want to go back to here, and here we want to reestablish the remote desktop connection. And they had us do, so yeah, they wanted us to go this way. So we're going to fire off remote desktop connection. We still have that setting, and we're going to, so we've already passed that connection. Accessibility is still there, and we're able to establish a remote connection to that desktop because nothing has been changed. The settings were saved. All I did was log off the computer. So it's no different than user two clicking start and log off. Okay. All of the applications that would have been open on that server for that user would have been closed because that user would have logged off. So you can imagine how annoying that can be. If I'm user two and I've opened a bunch of applications, I have documents opened, I have all this thing happening, and I allow somebody to remote in and they incorrectly, instead of disconnecting their remote session, they log me off. Now I've got to log back in. See, so on the remote computer, I had already opened this up, right? So that's why me, as being on server one, I connected to server two, and this is opened up. So what I'm supposed to do is click on start and disconnect. The worst thing that could happen is I could click shut down or restart. And again, if that was a main server and I hit shutdown, it would be shutting it down for the entire organization. So you have to be really careful. And this option for disconnect would only be available if you were RDP'd or remotely connected into that device. So look at that. I'm going to disconnect. Okay. And then if we switch back over, sorry, we can see that we do not have that tab anymore. Okay. All right, let's go down to where we were. 34, I think it was 29. Okay, so we have completed the first segment of this lab. So now, as always, it's giving us some information about RDP and the OSI model. It will run through this, and then there's some discussion questions. These are for you to review. My suggestion is that you want to, I always refer to it this way. You could check all the boxes and go through all of these labs and not own the information. For you to own the information, you need to fully understand it. So you need to take the time, and if you can't answer this question, then you want to either go back and research it or start having an interaction with some form of a reference material, help manual, generative AI, and have a discussion about terminal services and protocols and what they mean. You could also input this question into a generative AI as a prompt, saying, this is the question I'm being asked. And then you could, and I suggest, because the answer to this is pretty involved, you could turn on your mic and just speak into generative AI and say, this is how I would answer this question. And speak in, it will voice to text convert what you're saying, hit enter when you're done, and AI will take your question, take your answer, it will analyze it, and it will give you back where you were right, where you were wrong, what additional information you should have, what information you provided that wasn't relevant to this question. So it becomes an interactive, as opposed to you just asking the question. Asking AI what protocol handles a terminal services connection to a Windows-based PC for a classroom environment is an inappropriate use of AI. You want to tell AI what you think it is, just as if I had asked you or any professor had asked you that question, right? You would have to give a response. So give some response to AI, let it come back to you and tell you where you're correct, where you're not right, why the information you provided, it will give you, and if the information it gives you doesn't make sense, ask it questions. Okay, enough of that. All right, so now we're finished with that portion of the lab. Now we're going to go on to configuring the routing and remote access server role, RRAS, routing and remote access server. Okay, let me move this over. And so we can shut this down, exit. And it wants us to log into the first server. So here's important, it's saying that in this instance, the way the lab has been set up, the server will simulate a server that is connected to both a private and public network using two NICs, network interface card, right? So one NIC is set up on the private network and one NIC is set up on the public network, okay? And it says this exercise will enable you to proceed through processing of configuring RRAS for VPN, but will not allow connectivity testing. So let's see what all that means. All right. So it says, click the start button and select administrative tools. And server manager. Now, these options are only available, well, most of them are only available on a server. They're not available on a regular desktop, right? So this is a server. So it wants us to go to server. And my mouse acted up. And so I inadvertently moved that prompt to my desktop, but I want to just go to server manager. Okay, so now I'm obviously we're managing the server. Okay, so it wants us to open up under roles. So at the top of this is roles, and so we want to expand it or open it up. And then we're looking at network policies and access services. So I'm going to open that up. So it says that routing and remote access, by it being placed here, means it's been installed, but it's not enabled. It has the red dot or red button on it. It means it's not been enabled. That would have to be green for it to be enabled. It says this installation has already been completed for you, so RSS appears in the list of the server roles under policy, network policy and access services. Now it wants us to enable the service to configure your server. So the service is there, right? So basically it's like an application has been installed, but the application has not been turned on. So it's not been enabled and it's not been configured. So the first part of this, you would have to make sure that routing and remote access services has been installed on the server, which it has been. So now we're going to want to configure and enable this. So, and there's no, it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? There's an obvious reason why it's set up to be configure and enable routing and remote access as opposed to enable and configuring. You never want to enable something before you configure it or before you know that it's been configured. So we're going to fire off configure and enable. Okay, let's see. And it just wants us to click next. So we have various options, and it just wants to make sure that remote access, either through dial-up or VPN, has been checked, and it has. And again, over time, if you're part of this is for you to fully understand about networking. These are other services. And again, you can, because the course material, nor the live lessons, nor the labs will discuss any of these other options. It's a great opportunity for you to, again, interact with AI to ask it, explain to me what network address translator is, and what is the process of allowing internal clients to connect to internet using a public IP address. You can engage with it and ask it questions as opposed to having to go to a reference manual and read chapters and chapters on this. You can actually have a conversation. So anyway, it wants us to click next. And then we're going to do VPN. Okay. And then which virtual private network. So it creates a tunnel inside the network. If you're connecting on a public network or even a private network, and you create a VPN, it's a tunnel within a tunnel. So the tunnel is the public network. So everybody's communicating on the public network. And you're now creating, we're going to create a VPN, which is going to be this small private tunnel where you're the only one that is communicating on it. That's the VPN. Select the network interface. I'm sorry. Yeah, we want to click next. So we want to select, it says select the network interface that is connected to the public internet from which remote VPN clients will connect to this server. So again, we're on the server and we want to set this server up so that users external to this network can use a VPN connection to connect to this server. This is the typical setup for businesses that want users to have remote access to the server on the business network. So you would establish a VPN connection, and then you would be able to log into the device or devices that you were trying to log into. Without that VPN connection, you would not be able to do this. And once you establish that VPN connection, you're creating this private tunnel. So you can communicate, and you're the only one that's on that tunnel. Okay, so in this exercise, we'll be choosing the IP address to the external network to simulate an internet connection. It says leave the enable security, this option on the bottom, enabled. This will allow only VPN traffic on this link. Okay, so what this is saying is that you have to have a VPN connection in order to come in on this connection. You can't just RDP, you can't just try to remote in, you have to use a VPN connection. And we're using this, the top one, this is our external address. Let me just see. Okay, and we just click next. So it says on this page right here, we're going to specify the way in which the server, this server here, will acquire IP addresses for the remote VPN clients. If this wasn't selected, right, then this would be selected, and it would be setting up a specific range of IP addresses, but it's going to use DHCP, which means that when the VPN tunnel is connected, it's no different than if you were to walk in using your cell phone and you connect it to a wireless network. You're going to be assigned a DHCP IP address. It's going to just give you an IP address, right? If you were setting up a computer on the network and you physically plugged into it and DHCP was configured, you turned on your computer would be receiving an IP address from the network. This is saying it's going to do the exact same thing on a virtual a VPN connection. So we're just going to click next. And then so let me see, this is not following. Let me go back one. So I must have, so again, paying attention, I must have either double clicked inadvertently or my mouse acted up or something, but I was on this screen and somehow it jumped past this screen and went to this screen. So all I'm doing is just going back because we needed to be on this screen so that we could make sure that use routing and remote access in authenticate connection requests. So it's saying selecting to use a centralized server for authentication of the network clients would require that an additional, okay, you're on configuration, Joel. Hold on one second. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. You're here, right, Joel? Joel, is this where you're at? Configuration? Okay, I'm going to assume this is where you're at. So we're at, okay, good. So configuration. So we want to make sure that we're using a remote access. We're enabling remote access. So we enabled it. And then we want to make sure that we're specifying that we're going to use VPN. And we want to make sure that we're enabled on our external IP address. And then this is the step that I bypassed. We want to automatically assign the IP address in that VPN connection. And then it said the last thing is that we want to, do you want to set up this server to work with a radius server? And we don't, because that's a whole nother configuration. We do not want to use that. So we want to use routing and remote access. And so we hit next. And then I'm thinking, yep, now we can click finish. So now it's starting the service and it's going to use our configuration to set up the service correctly. Now let's see where we're at. And then we're done. We're done with the server manager. Again, there is no option here, anyone here for OK. So all of the configuration changes that we made have been accepted because of the process that we've done. So it's OK to hit the X and we close this. And now we're going to double click on the command prompt. Okay, again, we're going to use the command prompt as a tool. And it wants us to type in net user remote. And we're doing this so that we can see the properties for the remote users. Let me expand this up so we can see the whole window. There we go. All right, so it wants us to make sure that we have reached this point. This flag number means absolutely nothing in the network. It's strictly so that we're able to tell the lab that we made it to this point. So I'm going to click answer, and the flag number is 414411. So I'm going to type in 414411. I'm just going to check make sure 414411. I'll hit submit. And there we are. So again, that's just to tell the lab that we've followed the directions. So now we want to, it says type the following command and press enter to activate the remote account on internal one. So we want to activate this account on remote one. So we're going to type in net user remote /active, and we're going to tell it yes. So that's basically what that was to do, is to set it up. So now we have a Windows server that has been configured for remote routing and remote access services. It allows for external users, because we set this up on the external, the NIC that's pointing to the external or public IP address. It's going to allow anyone on the public network to set up a VPN connection first and then be able to get into the network. That's the whole purpose of this lab. Now we're going to create we're going to use, you can have custom generated VPN clients, or you can use the standard built-in VPN client. For the purpose of the lab, we're going to use the standard built-in VPN client. Most businesses will use a custom VPN client because all of the configuration is already set. They'll typically have the user go to a website, log in with some secure access, download this special configured VPN client, and then use that VPN client to connect to their server. But here for the test environment, we're just going to use this standard built-in VPN client. Okay. So it's assuming, so I'm just going to exit out of this because while it doesn't tell us, oh no. There we go. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to exit out of here. And then it says we want to make sure that we're on the .11 server. So I'm on the .10, so I'm going to fire off the .11. Here comes the .11 server. And again, I just did that by going back to this page, and I clicked on the .11. And we're going to log in like normal. It's the same password. Let me close out of here. Shut this down. Okay, so this is where you would normally be if you just logged straight into the server, and it says click on the network connection icon. That is here. If this is not enabled, in other words, if this fails to be there, okay, there's a number of ways. I want to see how they tell you. It says you may have to restart it for it to appear. You can also get to it. Let me see. Bear with me here a second. No, hang on one second. Because I'm on a server. There we go. And then you would go to control panel and then network and internet. And here we're going to have our network and sharing center. And then here we can change our adapter settings. It's no different than having this icon here, right-clicking on it, open network and sharing center, and I'm right there where I can change the adapter settings. Okay, and we want to look at our VPN connection 5 right here. right click on it and select property. So we're going to configure this or enable it. And it's probably going to ask us. Yep. So it wants us to enter in that flag number. Again, it's just to let the lab know that we have followed all the steps to get to this point. And then it wants us to, so let's just cancel out of this. It wants us to go to VPN connection 6, go to properties, do the same thing. And this one is going to be 616.891. Okay. Okay, so we're going to cancel out of this. Just going to stay in here. Okay, so it's a little, the instructions are can be a little confusing because it says in the left column, click the network and internet link. Well, they do show it here. They've highlighted it, but it's not in the left column. You would expect the left column to be here. You just got, what it's basically telling you to do is to go back one level. No different than, a filing structure. This is folder 1, folder 2, file. We're in this file or this folder where we want to go back one. So we just want to click here. So we're back to this. We could have used our back button to go there as well. And now we want to click and we want to set up a new connection or a network. Okay. Okay, so we want to connect. See, we could connect to the internet. That's just a standard connection. We could also set up a dial-up connection, but we are trying to establish a VPN connection, and we want to do that. This allows us to connect to a workplace. A workplace is usually where you're connecting to or establishing a VPN connection. So this is the one that we want to use. Excuse me. So we're going to hit next, and we don't want to use an existing connection. So we're going to establish a brand new connection. So it's not going to be any one of these VPN connections that you see here. It's going to be a brand new connection. And we're going to use the internet connection. We're not going to do a dial-up connection. We're just going to use an internet connection. Okay. And we have to click on it. And then we'll set up the internet connection later. And now we're specifying what address we're going to go to. So again, we're on our, let's say our home computer. We're setting up a VPN. We're going to use the standard VPN client. We're setting up that connection to be defined to go to a specific IP address. And this is the IP address, 131.107.0.200. And the destination name we're going to set up is internal 1. We're not going to select any of these settings. We're just going to hit next. So basically what it's saying is that when I fire off this VPN connection, it is going to search out the internet for 131.107.0.200 to establish a connection. And I'm configuring this so that I can already put in my username and password, so I don't have to have it pause and ask me this. This is where a business, the tech department, would pre-configure a VPN client so you would not even know what the username and password was. So it's more secure. There's no way for you to give out your username and password if you did not know it. So, but here we know that we're using the administrator login, and it's P@SSW0RD. We are not going to select any options. We're just going to click create. Okay, and then okay. Okay, so now we're going to close out. So what we did is we set up a VPN client so that we have it on our system. So all we have to do is run that VPN client, and it's pre-configured to go to a specific IP address, to pass a username and a password, and establish that VPN connection. Okay, and it says that we're not going to be able to do that. It says, click on the network connection icon. Let me see where it's telling us to go to. Okay, so it's asking us to go to the network connection icon, which is right here. Okay, and again, if this is not displayed, you can go to Start, Control Panel, and get to it. And it says, click on the remote connection icon. Here's our internal one. Okay, and we can, let's see, how is it asking us to do this? And then we can connect. Okay, so this is, so the VPN client can be the exact same for every user that's remote, but each individual user must have their own account on that device that they're VPNing into. So the client establishes the connection. This logs you into the server. So here we're going to use, yeah, we're changing this. So now we're going to be a remote user, and it's still using the same password. Let's see if it requires anything else. Okay, so again, the VPN client we configured is to establish the VPN connection. Now we've connected using the VPN connection. So we're communicating with the remote server inside this internal tunnel, this VPN connection, and now we're going to log into that server using our own individual access. And so we click connect. Human tunnel fails, the VPN server might, okay. And it's saying it will state registering on the network and show up as a blue connection. If the icon does not turn blue, that it does not turn blue, that it is acceptable, please continue to the next step. Okay, so again, it said that we're not going to be able to establish the actual connection, but you can see that it's trying to connect to the IP address that we originally put in. This is the port number that it's entering. So it's 131.107, I'm sorry, it's 131.107.0.200 is the IP address. It's using this connection that we configured, okay? And it's attempting, but we're not able to because the other end has not been set up. So it says that we can just cancel out of this. And let's see what it says here. So it's saying that sorry, I just lost my window. Here it is. Okay. So let's start from the beginning. So we want to use a secure connection for our remote users to get access to our server when they're either at home or they're traveling. So this VPN service allows this remote tunnel to be secure tunnel to be established so that they can communicate to the base server, the main server. So the first thing we did is we used the VPN client, the standard VPN client, and we manually configured it. The other option is the IT services could set up a customized VPN client that they would then configure and then distribute to the remote users. So they could establish a VPN connection, but they cannot go any further than that until they have a specific unique login to the server or to the device that they're VPNing in. So the VPN client can be configured, ready to go. Double click on it, it passes it right through, sets up the connection. Then it'll prompt the user to enter in their unique username and password. And that's the username and password for their account on that device. That will then allow them to log in. Now, some users will save that configuration in conjunction with their VPN connection. So all they have to do is double click on their VPN connection icon. It will establish the VPN and it will log them into the server. The bad thing about that is if somebody gets access that shouldn't have access to your desktop or your laptop, they immediately now have access to the server because the configuration for the VPN client has been saved on the server, and on your desktop, your device, and your unique ID, login, and password for that server has also been saved on the device. Not such a good thing. All right, let's see. And then again, there's discussion questions. Let's go on. And that is it. So, any questions about this lab? All right. So that was lab 4. Sorry, it was actually module 3 for week 4. It's our remote access RDP lab. So I'm going to stop the recording.